County 911.
We're trying to get away from some creepy guy. He had me tied in the basement. He's after me.
Hey, Z, I need you to go to somewhere safe. If you can run up to somebody's house. Where are you at right now? Are you getting able to get with you?
Help me. Help me.
On Christmas Day 2019, the Metro Police Department were contacted pertaining to a missing person, Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon was 25 years old. His parents report him missing because he had not shown up for a Christmas brunch, and they indicated that this was very out of character. His parents said that Kevin's roommate had told him that Kevin was last seen leaving his residence the day before, at approximately 5:22. And she had said that Kevin sent her a text at about 6:12 p.m. stating that he was going to be out late. He had met a person on a dating app, and he was going to meet up with that person to have some fun. But now he was nowhere to be found.
I knew something was wrong because no one could get a hold of him. I just remember that whole day calling his phone and hoping that there was going to be an answer. And unfortunately, there never was.
So after Kevin's parents contacted the police, they began their own search. They drove around the area and they discovered Kevin's vehicle in a parking lot. Police are notified and they respond.
What was odd is that everything that Kevin was known to have been wearing when his roommate had last seen him was in the car. His cell phone was in the car, his wallet, keys, everything except for Kevin.
At that point, we're thinking that this is highly unusual. Why are Kevin's clothes in the vehicle?
Did he disappear willingly, or is there foul play? We didn't have enough to know if a crime had been committed.
Something I always admired about Kevin is he was never afraid to express himself. He was not afraid to be this big, bald man with a pink polo and a purse and his nails done.
Kevin was just one of my truest, closest friends that I ever had. He was just very vibrant and he always had an opinion about everything.
When I first met Kevin, his major was psychology. He would spread awareness about important topics like the LGBTQ community and sexual violence prevention. His passion was helping people.
So Kevin's phone was handed over to the Michigan State Police Computer Crimes Lab. And on the phone, they found a chat log from a mobile dating app.
There was one person in particular that Kevin had been communicating with.
They were looking to have a date and have a consensual sexual encounter.
There was banter back and forth about where they were going to meet. And it did suggest that he was going to pick Kevin up and transport him back to his home.
And they were able to identify that it was a resident in Michigan, Mark Latunsky. We learned he was a 50-year-old divorced male. He was known to run different online sex forums, almost like a male escort type scenario.
Mark Latunsky had invited men over to his residence in October and November. Each of them dialed 911, claiming that they were in some sort of state of panic.
Go out to County 911.
I want to get away from some creepy guy. He had me tied in his basement.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I'm trying to escape from some guy who had me chained up in his basement.
He had you chained in his basement? Where are you calling from?
I don't know. I am heading down this road.
Are you on
In front of here.
Okay, hold on one second. Hold on one
I don't
second.
even have shoes on. You take after me.
Okay, Z, I need you to go somewhere safe. If you can run up to somebody's house. Where are you at right now? Are you able to get away?
Help me. Help me.
The state police had gone out and investigated those incidents, and they both had similar stories.
Police learned that the men were there for consensual sexual encounters and role-playing, but it became a little too intense at that time, causing the men to flee his residence. Once law enforcement contacted them, those men decided that they didn't want to pursue charges.
At this point, Mark Latunsky was a person of interest. Definitely a lot of red flags were there. We needed to go out and talk to Mark Latunsky at the house to see what kind of information he would be willing to give.
I remember there being some lights on. We just made a silent approach. We had knocked. Mark Latunsky answered, and we'd explained to him we were investigating a missing persons complaint with Kevin Bacon, asked consent to search the house, and Mark Latunsky granted it. Me and one of the other officers remained with Mr. Latunsky, just conversating with them. While they were searching the home, Mark appeared very calm and collected, not nervous whatsoever. His Christmas tree was still up. We were talking about that.
The troopers searched the upstairs of the residence. They didn't find anybody there. Then they went downstairs into the basement.
And I just hear my partner exclaim, "Oh my God, oh my God." I make my way to the top of the stairwell while Latunsky was still with the other officer. I see my partner, just absolutely all the life looked like it had been sucked out of my partner. He was just as white as a ghost. And he told me, "Lock him up." I didn't ask any questions. I went and immediately placed him in handcuffs, and he exhaled deeply and said, "You're making a mistake." And that was all.
28. Can we get some sort of update for EMS?
Central, this is most likely a K. We're going to treat this homicide.
When I arrived on scene, we were taken to a secluded room on the north side of the house. The room had a sliding barn door that only locked from the outside. So if the searching officers were not really thorough, it very easily could have been missed.
I remember thinking to myself, what in the world are we looking at?
The body was found at the far end of that room. He was nude, and he was hanging from his feet by the ceiling of the basement. There was a trap door that had been opened, exposing sand and dirt. And there was a dried pool of blood directly below the body.
He had been hanging there for a while, but initially, we couldn't see the injuries that he had.
The victim had lots of tattoos on his body, so we matched the tattoos and hair to the missing person flyer, and that was how they identified Kevin.
It was just completely evil. I mean, who could have done that to somebody?
The driver's seat, you can at least talk to him, but don't talk to him about anything.
Don't talk to him about anything.
I was tasked just to watch over him for the time being and listen if he decides to talk on his own, make any unsolicited statements to me.
Nothing happens here in Shiawassee. Yeah, you heard that one? I heard that one. They're gonna make sure that my daughter's okay, right? Yeah, we'll make sure your dog's fine. Okay. Hey, Mark. Yes, sir. Mark, I'm Sergeant Berdan, State Police, okay? Do you know what's going on? Do you know why you're in the back of the car? Yes, I know why I'm back in the back of this car. I got my detective in around. My detective's probably going to want to talk to you, okay? So that's fine. Okay. All right. I just wanted to let you know. And then once I talk to him, how am I going to get back home? Well, let's get stage one first, okay? Let's get the detective out here. Absolutely.
It was just bizarre because he didn't act like someone that had just killed somebody. I thought maybe it wasn't Mark Lutunsky. Maybe someone else killed Kevin.
Kevin was very outgoing. He always said what he felt. If you wanted to ask if your hair looked good that day, he would tell you yes or no, and you would know it would be honest. And I love that. Every week he would come over and we would all watch RuPaul's Drag Race together. And we actually went to a drag pageant together once too. That was so much fun. He was really good about supporting local LGBTQ efforts.
And then I can explain to him all the things that you guys don't know. Okay. And then I can come back home. Yeah, because we want to know your side of the story, okay? Absolutely.
The stakes are, this is a highly unusual crime scene. I have no idea what happened. Time is ticking. I don't know if Mark is going to want to continue to wait and be cooperative if I make him wait too long.
Come on.
We don't know if it was premeditated, if it was a sexual encounter gone wrong, whether it's heat of passion, was there anybody else involved?
Alright, to the detachment, dirt sheet is going to follow us, so just take 52 back. Where's 52? Is 52 back that way?
No, 52 is, you're going to come out the driveway and go left. Did Tina get moved back inside, or?
She sure did. Okay. She's a little precious little thing.
Isn't she though? She is.
Go straight. Go straight then, Mark?
Yeah, go straight.
It was just an odd scene, odd situation. He was comfortable. He was casual. He didn't act like a dead body is found in his house.
David Lutunsky. That is not my legal name. Oh, it isn't? No. That is a stolen identity. What happened to Mark David Lutunsky? I have no idea.
So the strategy was to just get him talking. But I remember thinking, we can't even get his name out. How are we going to get the story of what happened to Kevin?
However, all of the people that I grew up with knew that I'm not Mark David Lutunsky, and they just failed to tell me.
He was trying to direct the interview, so I sat back, I gave him control of the room. I wanted him to trust me, I didn't want him to shut down.
So what is the name that you prefer or that you use?
The name that I go by is Olikos.
How do you spell it?
Olykos.
Okay.
And when I hear the name Mark Latunski, I know that somebody's talking garbage. It's not real.
Okay, Olikos.
So,
All right.
He briefly glanced at me, I think almost in a surprised fashion. I feel calling him by Olikos, which was a vanity name, was showing him respect, is gaining his trust in me, and I'm trying to maximize that.
So, obviously, police came to your house, they were doing a welfare check. But before I go into that, what do you do for a living?
well, right now I'm just doing construction, working on building the house, picking up odd jobs. And then I put an ad on RentMan, and man, if I can get a massage and somebody's gonna pay me to rub him down, fine.
So like massages?
Just massages. Yeah, it's like, you know what? I'll spend time with you. You know, man can't guarantee sex, but you want to spend your time with me? Boom.
So at that point, I felt I had earned enough trust, and that was the perfect segue for me to discuss Kevin Bacon.
I know, I have been hired as
That's all right. I want to go back over to Kevin. So you initially start talking with Kevin. What sites did you meet him on?
I think that one was Grindr. Obviously the name that he'd used, and I didn't know whether it was his real name, a fake name, or what, because that's so common, particularly with anyone in the fetish arena. But no matter, we chatted for a while. He described the things that he wanted. I did what I could to bring those things about.
When did he come to your house?
I picked him up. We met, physically met, in Swartz Creek.
On what day?
Well, that would be the 24th.
Okay, on 12/24, Christmas Eve. Okay.
It was Christmas Eve.
And then,
Was that the first time that you ever met him in person?
That was the first time I ever met him. I had chatted with him.
That was all the parking lot.
That was all still in the parking lot. So I sat in the front, and he went in the back and put on the different gear that he wanted, that he had selected. He wanted to make sure that he was comfortable, and that he was living out a fetish fantasy.
good. I picture Kevin is in some sort of outfit.
He had on, he had on the handcuffs, he had earmuffs, and then blinders, and then he had on the leather wrist and ankle straps, and that was it.
He said that Kevin decided to wear all of those items from the parking lot to Mark's residence, and that Kevin's clothes were left in the vehicle.
And then I left the parking lot, and then we went back to the house.
So that kind of leads me into, I guess, what is going on with the, why we're here, there's welfare check, you let the troopers go in and graciously search your house, and they see a man that's hanging from the ceiling. Who is that man?
Well, I actually never used his name.
I felt a lot of pressure. Kevin's dead. He's got a family. They're going to want answers. I don't have them at all. I just broadly asked him who was the man in the basement and left it open-ended and let him kind of direct his thought process.
You don't know how many times I have, and this person switch gears a little bit because, you know, you talk to him and you realize how a person's life goes. You know what? In talking about this, I mean, I've never done this, but I still have never done this before.
Okay, so what did you do?
And we chatted for a while. He described the things that he wanted, and we made the agreement, and he was supposed to disappear, be gone. Does our society really allow that? No. And what it leaves behind is all kinds of I'm going to say, things for his family that a man doesn't want to leave. But that agreement between him and I really shouldn't have anything to do with anything but him or I.
So what was the agreement?
I would make his body disappear. And we talked about, you know, several things. You know, what was I going to do? And part of it was the process of turning, you know, that what portions of his body couldn't be used or gotten, that there were certain things as far as turning his bones into bone meal and turning them into something that would grow tulips for his family. Because my family will never know this.
He was framing the agreement as Kevin wanted to die, that it was an assisted suicide. They had conversations about how he could die and what would happen after he died.
I felt, you know, he's murdered this person and now he's certainly distancing himself.
And then what did you do?
Well, after talking to him in multiple ways, that was when he said, he laid out, he says, I'm ready. And I says, well, I could slit your throat. Here's the knife, I could do it that way. And I couldn't do it. I says, I don't know if that would be painless. And you know, we debated it, all of the different ways. I said, I have a sword upstairs, but it's dull. It just wouldn't work. I was afraid I would hurt him. And he says, just get the sword. And I'm not ready. I couldn't do that. I couldn't run the risk of maiming him and having him suffer. And after we debated it, I said, you know what? I think that given what we've got right here, if I just take the knife and put it through your spine, that will do it. And I handed him the knife so that he could handle it. Showed him, you know, that it was there. It's like, this is what it is. And he looked at it. I mean, we laid together for a while. He asked me to. I did.
I'm sorry, I asked you to just lay with him.
Just lay with him. Just lay with him and hold him. And finally, he says, you know what? I'm ready. I said, you know what? You say whatever you want to say. And finally, he leaned over and he put his head on the side and he says, go ahead and do it. And I did. And he says, I don't feel anything. And, you know, I mean, I'm on that side because he's laying on the floor and, you know, there was a fair amount of blood. And, you know, then it's like, you know, and he said a few more words. And he says, and he says, things started, and that was when I realized it wasn't enough. And so I just went and I went, I don't want to fucking move. And I went, I can see that.
So when did you end his suffering? Was he hanging or was he on the ground when you did his throat?
He was on the ground, and that was, and then of course it was a matter of doing what I needed to do to complete what I told him I would do. Turn him into something that would produce life.
For Mark to just openly say, I plunged the knife into his spine on his own, that was huge.
We're going to get justice for Kevin and his family, and as horrible as this is, maybe that'll help give them a little bit of closure.
Where's the knife now?
It is upstairs in, because I cleaned it off, and it is upstairs in the dresser drawer. I think on the right-hand side, top.
Is it like a kitchen knife? Is it, you know what I'm saying?
No, it's just a hunter's knife.
It's a hunter's knife. What color is it?
It has a black and gray handle.
Okay.
My stomach's upsetting me. So I gotta use the restroom. I got an upset stomach. Keep talking. I'll be right back. Looking back, that probably was a terrible excuse, but I had to get out of there. When I called the detective on scene and explained to him the description of the knife, there was a little bit of a waiting period as they walked up the stairs to the bedroom. And sure enough, the detectives found that knife. You could still see it had some dry blood on it. And it was a sense of relief because now we've got the murder weapon.
I don't feel that I did anything wrong.
Did you tell anybody else about this other than us?
I did. If you have an honorable death, then you have to tell somebody. I said, the police have a problem with it, then what? They throw me in jail.
It sounds honorable. You're talking to someone that's done a horrific thing. But I was trying to play into what he thought was good and honorable and normal. And it seemed to work. He seemed a little bit more at ease with us.
I actually texted a friend. I killed Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon is my hero.
Did you do this by yourself? You didn't have help?
I did it all by myself. I mean, it was during that evening, and then after he was, and I don't know, it's just flat out fact, is that after he was dead, he was hanging, I was done for the night, and it was then that I started to do what I told him I was going to do. It was the new moon, and in honoring my word to what I said I would do, that was when I took his, I cut them out, and I took them upstairs and I ate them.
Kevin decided to enroll in beauty school, and that was a big deal because he was already going to college. We definitely did fry my hair off one time, but I think we've all been there and made that mistake.
Doing hair definitely was a great creative outlet for him. He would actually come to my house and do my hair. And I remember having conversations about what he wanted to do beyond graduation. I think he was really considering a different scenery, landscape, a bigger city. I know that he had visited one of our mutual friends in Chicago. They went out to a bunch of places that were LGBTQ friendly, and he really, really loved it. So he came back really wanting to move to Chicago after that particular visit.
Was that his wishes? Is that the main reason why?
It was the discussion, you know, like wherever, you know, whatever is consumable is consumable. I will eat you, you know, and he says, okay, okay.
Definitely wasn't prepared for that. Fortunately, I was able to keep my composure for the most part, but I think my stomach was turning right about that time. So then at what point, how long after that did you cut his testicles off and take those upstairs?
That was, I mean, it was before I went to bed, because at that point, you know, I mean, I stayed with them for quite a while. I mean, and that was very important. And I says, you will not die alone. I says, I won't.
You know, and that, to me, as an outsider looking in, that shows me the type of person you are.
I said, I won't do that.
Absolutely.
I said,
you're a man of your word.
Regardless of what it is, I won't let you die alone.
Yeah.
And
that's very stand up of you. I mean,
well,
not a lot of people would do that.
It wasn't easy. And
no, but you're a good person. So, if you don't mind, I was just curious of how did you do that? Did you cook them? Did you? Where did you do that?
It was the griddle, and I mean I eat Rocky Mountain oysters anyway.
Sure.
I have a carton of them that I had bought, and so it's really very simple. You slice them thin, you saute them with some Worcestershire sauce, and once they're done, you just eat them. You know, the other portions were going to be jerky and the like, but I just ordered a dehydrator so that you know, I mean, I said not knowing, just so that I could continue to process the way and do what he wanted me to do.
So you would have taken more of his body and put it in the dehydrator?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
After Mark had provided us all of the graphic details of what he did to Kevin, it kind of dawned on me that this may not be Mark's only victim that he killed. And the fact that he was able to show no remorse, you know, try to justify it, that it was honorable. To me, he's one of the most dangerous people I've ever come in contact with. And once he's in jail, I probably won't get to speak to him ever again. So I wanted to make sure then that I switched tactics and try to figure out if Kevin was his only victim.
So that leads me to a question, and again, I appreciate your honesty. I can't make it up.
I'm looking at it, I'm saying, you know,
and that's
just what it is.
And again, that proves to me the type of person you are, the honesty, and you know that.
Like you said, it's not a matter of, some people would say, okay, and I think some people would say, not okay. But
so has this ever happened before?
Have you ever been requested in the past to do something that you did to Kevin, where they were down or they wanted to end their life? Have you ever assisted?
No, there have been people who have have hinted at it.
Okay.
You know, that I've shied away from it for obvious reasons.
You never assisted anybody with these type of wishes, or
No, I haven't.
or eating anybody else's testicles, or any other part of the body?
No. And I told him that as well. I've never done this.
Well,
I've never done it.
There came a point in time when I needed to confront him. I was aware of the two other men that had fled his house. Now I have to start putting my cards on the table. I know more than you think I do.
So I'm because you've been honest with us, and because I appreciate that. And I'm not going to be disrespectful. I'm trying to sit back and visualize how this all played out. And with your demeanor, you're so calm. And I'm just wondering, is this really the only person that this has happened with?
You're completely wrong.
Okay. Back in November, the troopers came out because there was somebody who ran from your house.
He was hanging from my ceiling by his you know.
What I'm saying is, if that was a consensual act, at what point or what caused him to flee leads me to believe that Kevin isn't the only one.
Fair enough. And this is what I will say. I mean, this doesn't offend you. I mean,
No, it doesn't. I'm a grown man.
Okay. He was playing along very well until he got me to him. I had no problem with that.
But didn't he go there wanting a sexual encounter with you?
Yeah.
So then why would he freak out?
I don't know.
He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't demeaning. I actually believed him to an extent. I feel like his reaction would have been different had there been other victims.
I'll explain it. Whether or not. Who knows? Am I going to be able to go back home and take care of the dog, or do you know, or what?
I'd like to take pictures of your hands and your forearms. Just get photographs.
Oh, okay. Well, at this point, we are going to put you back in that cell there. And under the circumstances, you're going to be going to jail tonight until so we can figure out exactly what the prosecutor wants to do. All right?
At that point, I have nothing left to speak about with Mark. I felt that I had everything that I could give to the prosecutor pertaining to his interview or interrogation. So I ended the interview.
Initially, he was charged with open murder, which allows the jury to decide which degree of murder. We believed that there definitely was premeditated. This definitely was part of an elaborate plan to become a cannibal.
We'll take you over to the Shiawassee County Jail.
You know that the prosecuting attorney here doesn't like me.
He was disappointed that he wasn't going home. He thought he would be exonerated. How can a human do this to another human and not have an ounce of regret or remorse?
After the interview with Mark, and still having the lingering questions of are there other victims of Mark, I then reached out to the FBI. The FBI didn't think he had killed before, but potentially had the capacity to have had other victims if he was not caught.
We're extremely fortunate he got the taste of death, and had he gone undetected, we probably would have been looking at a serial killer.
This is one of the most brutal, horrific murders I've seen, not only in this county, but in the state.
At that time, Kevin was turning his life around. He made plans. He had some future plans.
Bacon's family says their prayers were answered with a first-degree murder charge. As for their son's tragic death, it is something they struggle to live with every day.
I think about him every day. He's always in my thoughts.
Mark was under the impression that he could convince us that what he did was what Kevin wanted, but yet we had learned from the text messages Kevin didn't want to die. Kevin by no means wanted this to happen.
I think it was justice for Kevin, and my heart goes out to the family. They can never get their son back, but at least we know that Mr. Lutunsky will never be out on the streets again.
As someone who works with survivors of sexual violence, I think it's really important that we never victim blame. It was not Kevin's fault that this happened. We can do everything right and protect ourselves in the best ways possible, but at the end of the day, it is the perpetrator who caused that to happen.
Still to this day, it's hard. Sometimes I feel like it's not real, and I just want everyone to think of rainbows when they think about Kevin, because that's what he was.
Every town has a story it refuses to tell. Not because the people have forgotten, because they remember too well. Ask anyone who has lived in Blackwood County long enough, and they will eventually fall silent when the conversation reaches the old Morgan farmhouse. The silence comes first, then the uneasy glance toward the eastern woods. Finally, someone changes the subject. 32 years have passed. The house is gone. The family is gone. Yet every October, someone leaves 5 white lilies beside the cracked concrete foundation where the kitchen once stood. No one has ever admitted doing it. No one has ever been seen. And no one has ever explained why fresh footprints always appear in the morning, leading out of the forest, never into it. The official records describe the incident in a single sentence. 5 missing persons. Presumed homicide. No suspect identified. But official records never tell the whole story. Blackwood County sat deep within the rolling hills of northern Missouri, surrounded by dense oak forests and forgotten logging roads that twisted through miles of wilderness. Fewer than 8,000 people lived there in the autumn of 1991. Everybody knew everybody. Children rode bicycles until sunset. Front doors stayed unlocked. Pickup trucks remained parked outside grocery stores with their keys still dangling from the ignition. Violence belonged somewhere else. Big cities. Television. Newspapers. Never Blackwood. That illusion died during the first week of October. Rain had fallen for nearly 3 days without stopping. The river overflowed. Telephone lines crackled. Power failed across several neighborhoods. By Saturday evening, most families had settled indoors, waiting for the storm to pass. At the end of Hollow Creek Road stood the Morgan farmhouse, nearly 70 years old. White wooden walls, a rusted windmill, a weather-beaten red barn leaning slightly toward the tree line. It wasn't remarkable. Just another farmhouse surrounded by cornfields already stripped bare after harvest. Inside lived 5 people. Daniel Morgan, 46, former Army mechanic, known for repairing tractors long after everyone else had gone home. Emily Morgan, 43, elementary school teacher, the kind who remembered every student's birthday. Jacob, 17, captain of the high school baseball team. Quiet, responsible, never in trouble. Olivia, 14, loved photography. Rarely went anywhere without her old 35mm camera hanging around her neck. And Ethan, 8 years old, the youngest, always smiling, always asking questions. If someone had asked their neighbors to describe the Morgan family on Friday afternoon, every answer would have sounded nearly identical. Good people, hardworking, ordinary, exactly the sort of family you expected to live there forever. Nobody realized they had less than 24 hours left. Saturday evening unfolded like countless others. At 6:10 p.m., Daniel stopped at Fletcher's General Store. Security cameras didn't exist inside the tiny shop, but the owner later remembered every detail. Daniel bought motor oil, coffee, dog food, a loaf of bread. Nothing unusual. He joked about the rain. Complained the generator would probably quit before midnight. Paid in cash. Left. Emily visited the county library shortly afterward. She returned 3 overdue books. Borrowed 2 mystery novels. The librarian later recalled Emily laughing because she'd promised herself not to start another book until finishing the previous one. She never had the chance. Jacob attended baseball practice until early evening. 3 teammates watched him drive away in his aging blue pickup. One remembered Jacob shouting through the open window, "See you Monday." Monday came. Jacob didn't. Olivia spent part of the afternoon photographing flooded creeks outside town. Several rolls of undeveloped film were later found inside her bedroom. The final photographs would become some of the most scrutinized images in Blackwood County history. At the time, they were simply pictures taken by a teenage girl who loved cameras. Ethan never left home. His world revolved around comic books, toy dinosaurs, and the old golden retriever named Scout that followed him everywhere. Nothing about Saturday suggested catastrophe. Until 8:47 p.m. According to telephone company records, Emily called her younger sister, Sarah. The conversation lasted exactly 11 minutes. Weather, school, Thanksgiving plans. Nothing alarming. Then Emily suddenly paused. Sarah later testified she heard what sounded like tires crunching across wet gravel outside the house. Emily walked toward the kitchen window. That's strange. What is? I thought Daniel was already home. Another pause. Longer this time. Sarah heard Emily whisper something she couldn't understand. Then a single sentence. I'll call you back. The line went dead. Emily never called again. At approximately 9:15 p.m., 2 neighboring farmers reported hearing what they believed were fireworks somewhere near Hollow Creek Road. The storm masked most sounds. Neither investigated. Only later did they question whether those sharp cracks had been something entirely different. The rain intensified after 10 o'clock. Roads emptied. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Electricity failed across sections of eastern Blackwood. The Morgan farmhouse disappeared into darkness. No one noticed. No one had reason to. Sunday morning arrived cold and strangely quiet. Daniel had promised to help neighbor Frank Holloway repair a broken combine before church. By 8:30 a.m., Daniel hadn't arrived. Unusual. By 9:15, still nothing. Frank drove toward the Morgan property. The gravel driveway was empty. Daniel's truck sat exactly where it always did. Emily's station wagon remained beside the porch. Jacob's pickup rested near the barn. All 3 vehicles. Exactly where they should have been. Frank assumed the family had overslept. He walked onto the porch. Knocked. No answer. Knocked harder. Still nothing. Then he noticed the front door. Half open, the house was silent. Not the ordinary silence of sleeping people. A heavy silence. The kind that immediately tells you something is wrong. Frank stepped inside. Danny? Nothing. Emily? Only the grandfather clock answered. Tick, tick, tick. Coffee still sat inside the pot. Cold. 5 breakfast plates remained stacked neatly inside the cabinet. Beds upstairs appeared untouched since the previous evening. The television was still on. Static filled the living room. Scout, the family dog, was nowhere to be found. Neither was anyone else. 5 people. Gone. Frank called the sheriff's office at 9:42 a.m. Deputy Alan Pierce arrived 14 minutes later. His first impression matched Frank's exactly. Nothing looked like a burglary. Wallets remained inside drawers. Jewelry untouched. Cash inside a ceramic cookie jar exactly where Emily always kept emergency money. No signs of struggle. No broken furniture. No shattered windows. It looked as though the Morgans had simply stopped existing until Pierce entered the kitchen. There, near the back door, he saw it. A single muddy boot print. Large. Far bigger than Daniel's. Leading toward the hallway. Only one. No matching return print. No second footprint beside it. Just one impossible impression drying slowly across the wooden floor. Pierce followed it. The print ended 3 steps later. Nothing beyond it. As if whoever made it had vanished into thin air. Outside, investigators discovered something even stranger. Fresh tire tracks. Wide. Aggressive tread. Unlike any vehicle owned by the Morgans. The tracks approached the farmhouse during the storm. They circled once around the barn, then disappeared back toward the woods instead of returning to the county road. Deputies followed them nearly half a mile before the trail ended abruptly in solid rock. No abandoned vehicle. No footprints. No explanation. By noon, more than 30 officers had arrived. By sunset, over 100 volunteers. The search spread through fields, creeks, drainage ditches, the surrounding forest. Dogs searched continuously. Helicopters from the Missouri Highway Patrol swept overhead between breaks in the weather. Nothing. Not a shoe. Not a backpack. Not a single article of clothing. It was as though an entire family had dissolved into the rain. Before midnight, the governor approved additional resources. News stations interrupted regular broadcasts. Across Missouri, viewers saw a smiling family photograph of the Morgans accompanied by a headline that would dominate television for weeks. Family of 5 vanishes from rural farmhouse. Most people assumed the mystery would be solved within days. They believed someone would spot the family. A ransom demand would arrive. A witness would remember the suspicious truck. The truth would emerge. Instead, each new sunrise only deepened the mystery. Because hidden inside Olivia Morgan's bedroom closet, investigators were about to discover 3 undeveloped rolls of film and 1 photograph, taken only hours before the family disappeared, would convince seasoned homicide detectives that someone had been watching the Morgan house long before that storm ever began. By sunrise on Monday, Blackwood County no longer resembled the quiet farming community people had known for generations. Television satellite trucks lined the courthouse square. Reporters crowded outside the sheriff's office. State investigators established a temporary command center inside the county fairgrounds. Volunteers continued pouring into town from neighboring counties, carrying flashlights, radios, ropes, and maps that quickly became stained with mud and rain. No one wanted to believe 5 people could simply disappear. Not without a scream, not without a struggle, not without leaving something behind. Yet after nearly 48 hours of searching, investigators possessed only fragments. One oversized boot print, a set of unidentified tire tracks, an empty farmhouse, and 5 missing members of the Morgan family. It wasn't enough. Sheriff Thomas Keller understood that time was already working against him. Every hour that passed meant memories faded. Rain washed away evidence. Rumors multiplied. He gathered his investigators inside the community hall shortly after 7 that morning. A county map stretched across the wall. Colored pins marked every location already searched. The pattern was disturbing. Thousands of acres. Nothing. "We're treating this as an abduction until evidence tells us otherwise," Keller said. No one argued. There was little else to call it. Crime scene technicians returned to the Morgan farmhouse with a more methodical approach. Every room was photographed, every fingerprint lifted, every drawer cataloged. The kitchen table still held 5 unopened pieces of mail. A school permission slip waiting for Emily's signature. A repair estimate for Daniel's tractor. An electricity bill due the following week. The ordinary details of ordinary lives. Lives that had stopped without warning. In Jacob's bedroom, detectives found textbooks neatly stacked beside baseball trophies. His wallet remained on the dresser. His driver's license. His cash. Even the keys to his pickup. If Jacob had left voluntarily, why leave everything behind? Olivia's room revealed something different. Camera equipment covered one corner. Photo albums filled another. Dozens of envelopes contained carefully labeled negatives from years of photography. Nature. Friends. School events. Family vacations. She photographed everything. Detective Rachel Monroe carefully removed 3 undeveloped rolls of 35mm film from a shoebox beneath Olivia's desk. Each canister had a handwritten date. October 3rd. October 4th. October 5th. The disappearance occurred the evening of October 5th. These were almost certainly Olivia's final photographs. The film was rushed to the State Forensic Laboratory. No one expected it to become the investigation's first genuine breakthrough. The search expanded into Blackwood Forest. Locals rarely ventured deep inside. Old logging roads had long since disappeared beneath weeds. Collapsed hunting cabins stood hidden among towering oaks. Dry creek beds twisted through ravines that even experienced hunters avoided after dark. Search teams divided into grids. Every volunteer received instructions. Walk slowly. Do not disturb potential evidence. Report anything unusual. The first day produced nothing. The second produced less. Dogs repeatedly lost scent where heavy rain had flooded the ground. Helicopters identified abandoned vehicles. Every one belonged to local hunters. Divers searched 2 nearby reservoirs. Nothing. Investigators examined abandoned wells across 6 farms. Nothing. Every promising lead dissolved into disappointment. Then came the phone calls. Hundreds of them. Someone claimed seeing the Morgans at a roadside diner 50 miles away. Another insisted Daniel had argued with strangers at a gas station. One anonymous caller claimed the family had entered witness protection. Another whispered that Blackwood Forest hid an old cult responsible for disappearances stretching back decades. Every tip entered the system. Every tip required investigation. 98% were eliminated within hours. The remaining 2% consumed valuable manpower. Still, ignoring one legitimate witness could destroy the entire case. Late Tuesday afternoon, Detective Monroe received a call from the forensic lab. The photographs are ready. She drove there immediately. The technician spread dozens of freshly developed prints across a light table. At first glance, nothing. Flooded fields, a rusted bridge, autumn leaves, Scout chasing birds, Jacob laughing beside the barn, Emily hanging laundry, Daniel repairing a fence, normal family photographs. Then Monroe reached the final strip of negatives. The last 4 images had been taken shortly before sunset. Photo 1, the Morgan farmhouse. Photo 2, Daniel standing beside the tractor. Photo 3, the eastern tree line. Monroe froze. There. The technician leaned closer, half concealed behind a massive oak tree, almost blending into the shadows. A man stood watching the farmhouse. Not walking. Not hunting. Watching. The distance made facial identification impossible. Only a silhouette. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark jacket. Something resembling a baseball cap. He appeared to be looking directly toward Olivia. The next photograph showed only trees. The figure was gone. No blur. No movement. Simply gone. Monroe immediately requested enlargement. The grain became more pronounced. The image grew softer. Yet one detail remained unmistakable. The man wasn't carrying hunting equipment. Instead, something long rested against his shoulder. Too narrow for a shovel. Too straight for a walking stick. Investigators could not determine exactly what it was. Only that he had been there, watching, hours before the family disappeared. The photograph changed everything. Until that moment, investigators possessed no evidence suggesting anyone had been surveilling the Morgan property. Now they did. Copies circulated to every law enforcement agency in Missouri. Newspapers printed a cropped version requesting public assistance. Television stations replayed the image repeatedly. Have you seen this man? Do you recognize the clothing? The response was immediate. Thousands believed they did. Some identified local farmers. Others named traveling salesmen. Several accused neighbors. Within days, nearly 80 individuals had been reported as possible matches. Detectives interviewed every one. None could be connected to the disappearance. The mystery deepened. Meanwhile, forensic specialists continued examining the farmhouse. Luminol testing inside the kitchen revealed something investigators had missed. Tiny traces of blood. Invisible to the naked eye, the amount was extremely small. Far too little to determine what had happened. Laboratory analysis later confirmed only one conclusion. The blood belonged to a human. The technology of 1991 could establish blood type. It could not identify a specific individual with certainty. The sample was carefully preserved. Perhaps, one day, science would advance far enough to reveal more. No one imagined just how important that tiny sample would eventually become. Detective Monroe returned to the enlarged photograph repeatedly. Something about it bothered her. The man stood with unusual stillness. Almost too still, like someone accustomed to waiting, watching, planning. She overlaid maps showing Olivia's location when the photograph had been taken. The angle suggested the figure remained nearly 200 yards away, far enough to avoid attention, close enough to observe the house. Had Olivia noticed him? Or had she unknowingly captured the only image of the person responsible? No answers emerged. Only more questions. Then, 3 days after the photograph became public, a truck driver entered the sheriff's office carrying an old road atlas. He pointed toward a forgotten logging route running through Blackwood Forest. "I saw a pickup there Friday night," he said quietly. "What kind?" dark-colored. Can you describe it? Not really. What time? Maybe 8:30. Anyone inside? The driver hesitated. I only saw someone standing beside it. One person. I think so. You think? It was raining hard. Did you report it? No. Why not? The man lowered his eyes. Because I didn't know 5 people were about to disappear. The location matched the direction of the mysterious tire tracks discovered behind the Morgan farmhouse. For the first time, investigators had a possible route. Search teams returned immediately. Metal detectors swept the area. Ground-penetrating radar examined disturbed soil. Cadaver dogs searched for human scent. Nothing. Until late that afternoon. Deputy Ryan Ellis called everyone over. Near the edge of an overgrown drainage ditch, half buried beneath wet leaves, lay a child's red plastic dinosaur. Its tail had snapped off. The paint was badly scratched. Detectives photographed it before carefully placing it into an evidence bag. Emily's sister identified it the next morning. It belonged to Ethan. He carried it almost everywhere. Finding it miles from the farmhouse transformed the search once again. Someone or something had traveled through these woods, and wherever that path led, the answers were waiting, even if they had been buried beneath 30 years of silence. By the end of the first week, Blackwood County had become the center of the largest search operation in state history. Nearly 400 volunteers, state police, conservation officers, mounted search teams, military helicopters equipped with infrared cameras. The disappearance of the Morgan family was no longer considered a local tragedy. It had become a national story. Television anchors repeated the same question every evening. How can an entire family disappear without leaving a single trace? No one had an answer. Not yet. The discovery of Ethan Morgan's broken toy dinosaur changed the direction of the investigation. Until then, detectives believed the family had most likely been taken directly from the farmhouse and transported elsewhere. Now another possibility emerged. Perhaps the kidnappers had traveled through Blackwood Forest immediately after leaving the property. Perhaps something had happened inside those woods. Search grids expanded another 20 square miles. The forest was divided into numbered sectors. Each team received precise coordinates. Every inch of ground would be examined. Nothing would be overlooked. Blackwood Forest possessed a reputation that stretched back generations. Long before highways crossed the county, loggers had carved narrow trails through the hills. Many disappeared after the timber industry collapsed. Old maps no longer match reality. Nature had reclaimed everything. Collapsed bridges vanished beneath moss. Dry wells had beneath fallen leaves. Abandoned cabins leaned against enormous oak trees, their roofs slowly collapsing under decades of rain and snow. Locals rarely entered the deeper sections. Hunters avoided them. Even experienced hikers preferred staying closer to marked trails. The forest had a way of swallowing direction. Several search volunteers later admitted they felt constantly watched. Nobody laughed, because nearly everyone felt the same thing. Detective Rachel Monroe remained focused on evidence rather than superstition. She believed answers always existed. The challenge was finding them before time erased every opportunity. Standing beside the location where Ethan's toy had been recovered, she studied the surrounding terrain. The drainage ditch curved northward before disappearing into dense woodland. Several broken branches suggested that something or someone had moved to the area recently. Crime scene technicians collected bark samples, plant fibers, soil, anything that might later prove significant. Then another discovery emerged. Approximately 60 yards farther into the woods, an officer located a length of bright blue fabric tangled around a broken branch. The material had been exposed to rain. Mud covered one side. Laboratory testing later confirmed it matched the denim jacket Olivia Morgan had been wearing in photographs taken earlier that day. It was the first confirmed physical link between the missing family and the forest. Hope briefly returned. If evidence existed here, perhaps more waited nearby. For 3 consecutive days, search teams moved forward yard by yard. Metal detectors swept the ground. Cadaver dogs searched continuously. Specialists climbed into ravines. Divers examined flooded creeks. Nothing. Then, late Thursday afternoon, a dog named Ranger suddenly stopped. His handler noticed the change immediately. The German shepherd circled a patch of earth several times before barking repeatedly toward a narrow clearing surrounded by pine trees. Everyone rushed forward. The ground looked ordinary. Leaves, mud, small stones. Yet Ranger refused to move. Excavation began carefully. Every inch was photographed. Every layer documented. After nearly an hour, investigators uncovered a shallow hole. Inside, not human remains. Instead, a rusted metal toolbox. Locked, heavily corroded. The discovery puzzled everyone. Why bury a toolbox in the middle of nowhere? Crime scene technicians forced it open. Inside rested several ordinary hand tools. A flashlight, old batteries, a faded road map, and something else, a folded newspaper. Its date caught Detective Monroe's attention immediately. October 5th, 1991. The very day the Morgan family disappeared. The front page carried no fingerprints suitable for identification. Rain and moisture had destroyed most biological evidence. But someone had intentionally hidden it. The question was why. Back at headquarters, investigators spread the road map across the evidence table. Several locations had been circled in red marker. The Morgan farmhouse, an abandoned fire tower, a dried lake bed nearly 15 miles away, and an old quarry that had officially closed 20 years earlier. No explanation accompanied the markings. No names. No notes. Only circles. Sheriff Keller ordered every location searched. Immediately, the abandoned fire tower yielded nothing beyond beer cans left by teenagers. The dried lake bed revealed discarded hunting equipment dating back years. The quarry was different. Hidden behind steep cliffs and thick vegetation, it had become almost invisible from the main road. Concrete foundations remained from an old crushing facility. Broken conveyor belts rusted beneath weeds. Large tunnels disappeared into darkness beneath the hillside. State police secured the entrance before investigators entered. Flashlights swept across damp stone walls. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling. The tunnels extended far deeper than county records suggested. Someone had been here recently. Fresh boot prints crossed the muddy floor. Not dozens. Not even several. Just one clear trail. Large. Deep. The approximate size matched the oversized boot print discovered inside the Morgan farmhouse. Detective Monroe knelt beside the impression. The tread pattern appeared remarkably similar. She ordered detailed casts. The trail continued nearly 300 feet before ending inside a collapsed chamber where tons of rock had fallen decades earlier. If someone had gone beyond that point, there was no obvious path. Search crews examined every accessible section. No signs of the Morgan family. No clothing. No personal belongings. Nothing. Yet investigators left convinced of one thing. Whoever entered those tunnels had done so after the recent rain. Someone still knew about the quarry. That evening, another witness came forward. His name was Leonard Hayes, retired railroad engineer, 68 years old. He lived alone roughly 3 miles east of the Morgan property. Hayes admitted he had delayed contacting police because he wasn't certain what he had seen. Now, after watching repeated television coverage, he believed it mattered. On the night of October 5th, around 10:15 p.m., he had been sitting beside his living room window during the storm. Power had failed. The countryside was almost completely dark. Then headlights appeared along the old logging road. Not one vehicle. 2. The first resembled a dark pickup truck. The second, a white cargo van. Hayes watched them disappear toward Blackwood Forest. Neither returned while he remained awake. Detectives questioned him for nearly 4 hours. His account remained consistent. Could memory after several days be trusted? Perhaps. Perhaps not. But it aligned with other pieces already collected. Unknown tire tracks. The logging road. The quarry. The mysterious figure in Olivia's photograph. For the first time, investigators believed they might be looking at more than one offender. The media seized upon the new developments. Speculation exploded nationwide. Some newspapers suggested organized kidnappers. Others proposed a survivalist group hiding deep inside the forest. Talk radio hosts invented increasingly elaborate theories. Sheriff Keller responded with a brief statement. "We are following evidence, not rumors." Behind closed doors, however, pressure mounted. The governor requested daily updates. Federal authorities offered additional assistance. Families across the region demanded reassurance that the people responsible would be found. Weeks passed. No ransom demand arrived. No financial activity appeared under any Morgan family account. No confirmed sightings emerged anywhere in the country. It became increasingly difficult to believe the family was still alive, yet without bodies, without a crime scene. Investigators could not abandon hope. Late one Friday evening, Detective Monroe remained alone inside the evidence room. The enlarged photograph of the unknown man rested beneath a lamp. Beside it lay casts of the oversized boot print, the quarry map, the buried newspaper, Ethan's broken dinosaur, pieces of a puzzle that refused to connect. She reached for Olivia's camera one more time. The old 35mm model had already been processed for fingerprints. Nothing useful. As Monroe turned it over in her hands, something caught her attention. The leather camera strap felt unusually stiff near one end. She examined it under brighter light. The stitching had been repaired. Recently, using black, thread different from the original. Curious, she carefully loosened the damaged section. A tiny strip of folded photographic film slipped onto the table. Not a full roll, just a narrow piece containing 3 undeveloped frames. No one had listed it in the original evidence inventory. Someone, either accidentally or intentionally, had hidden it inside the camera strap. Monroe stared at the tiny strip for several seconds before calling the forensic laboratory. If the hidden negatives contained photographs taken after Olivia's last known pictures, they might reveal exactly what happened during the family's final hours. And somewhere inside those unseen frames, the investigation was about to encounter a face that no one in Blackwood County had expected to see. The discovery inside Olivia Morgan's camera changed the investigation overnight. For nearly 2 weeks, detectives had been searching through uncertainty. Every clue seemed incomplete. Every theory collapsed under examination. The photograph of the unknown man had created suspicion. The boot print had created questions. The abandoned quarry had created fear. But none of those discoveries had provided what investigators needed most: a clear answer, a direct connection, a moment captured in time. The hidden strip of film offered something different: a possibility, a final record from the person who had unknowingly documented the moments before the Morgan family's disappearance. The forensic laboratory technicians worked carefully. The film fragment was fragile. Decades later, investigators would describe the process as a race against deterioration, but in 1991, even advanced laboratory equipment could not guarantee perfect recovery. The strip had been exposed to moisture. Its chemical coating had begun to degrade. One mistake could destroy whatever images remained. Detective Rachel Monroe waited outside the laboratory with Sheriff Keller. Neither spoke much. Both understood the importance of what was happening. If the images showed only another ordinary photograph, the investigation would return to the same dead end. But if they revealed something connected to the disappearance, they could change everything. After several hours, the laboratory technician finally appeared. He carried a small envelope. His expression was serious. I was able to recover 3 frames. Monroe immediately stood. "Can we see them?" The technician nodded. "But you should understand something." "What?" "The images are damaged." "How damaged?" "Enough that some details may never be clear." He placed the photographs beneath the light. The first image appeared slowly. At first, only darkness. Then shapes emerged. The Morgan farmhouse, taken from a distance, not from Olivia's usual photography position. Someone had moved. The second image developed more clearly, a view toward the back entrance. The kitchen light was visible through the window. The timestamp indicated approximately 8:36 p.m., 20 minutes before Emily's final phone call. Monroe leaned closer. Something appeared near the doorway. A shadow. A person, standing outside the house. The third photograph was the one that stopped everyone in the room. It showed the figure closer. Not much, but enough. The person was no longer hidden behind trees. The camera had captured a partial view. A face. Not clear. Not complete, but recognizable enough to create a new direction. The man in the photograph was not a stranger. The image was immediately compared with local records. Detectives began reviewing every person connected to the Morgan family. Neighbors, co-workers, friends, former employees, business contacts, anyone who had regular access to the property. The question changed. Investigators were no longer asking, who was watching the Morgans? They were asking, who had a reason to be near them? The first person investigators examined was Daniel Morgan's former business partner, Victor Hale. Hale had worked with Daniel for almost 10 years repairing agricultural equipment. The partnership ended 6 months earlier after a financial disagreement. According to public records, Daniel had accused Hale of mishandling business funds. Hale denied the accusation. The dispute never reached court. But investigators now discovered something interesting. Victor Hale owned an old dark-colored pickup truck, a vehicle similar to the one connected to the tire tracks near the farmhouse. Detectives questioned him immediately. Hale admitted visiting the Morgan property several times in the past. He admitted arguing with Daniel, but he denied being there on October 5th. His explanation was simple. He claimed he spent the evening at home watching television. His wife confirmed his story. At first, investigators considered him a strong person of interest. Then they found a problem. The tire tracks near the Morgan farmhouse did not match his truck. The boot print did not match his shoes. And forensic examination of the photograph could not confirm his identity. Victor Hale remained suspicious. But suspicion was not proof. The next name came from a completely different direction. Emily Morgan's school. A substitute teacher named Thomas Reed. Reed had worked at Blackwood Elementary for 2 years. Several teachers described him as quiet, polite, almost invisible. But investigators discovered that he had developed an unusual interest in Emily. He frequently volunteered to help with school activities. He attended community events where Emily was present. A former co-worker claimed Reed had once said he understood Emily better than anyone. The statement raised concerns. Detectives searched his background. Nothing criminal appeared. No violence. No arrests. No history of threats. Again, suspicion without evidence. Another dead end. As investigators followed each possible lead, the public grew increasingly impatient. The Morgan family had been missing for nearly a month. National media coverage began fading. Other stories replaced it. But inside Blackwood County, the case remained everywhere. Parents watched their children more carefully. Neighbors locked doors that had never been locked before. People who had lived together for decades began looking at each other differently. Because the most frightening possibility was no longer that a stranger had entered Blackwood. It was that the person responsible might have been someone already there. Someone familiar. Someone trusted. Then investigators received a call that reopened an old question. The caller was Sarah Whitmore, Emily Morgan's sister. She had initially told police about the strange phone conversation on the night of the disappearance. Now she remembered something else. Something she had forgotten. During that final call, before Emily said, "I thought Daniel was already home," Sarah had heard another voice. Very briefly. A man's voice. Not Daniel. Sarah had originally assumed it was television audio or radio interference. But after seeing the recovered photographs, she was no longer certain. What did the voice say? Detective Monroe asked. Sarah paused. "I don't know." "You heard words." Maybe. It sounded like he said her name. "Emily?" "No." Sarah looked uncomfortable. It sounded like he said. She stopped. Monroe waited. "Mrs. Morgan." The room became silent, because whoever had been inside or near that house had not called Emily by her first name. They had spoken formally, like someone who knew her, but was not close enough to call her Emily. The investigation shifted again. Detectives returned to the farmhouse. This time, they focused entirely on the timeline. They recreated every confirmed event. 6:10 p.m. Daniel at Fletcher's store. 6:45 p.m. Jacob leaves baseball practice. 7:15 p.m. Emily returns home. 8:36 p.m. Unknown figure photographed near the house. 8:47 p.m. Emily calls Sarah. 9:15 p.m. Neighbors hear possible gunshots. 10:15 p.m. Leonard Hayes sees vehicles near the logging road. After that, nothing. A gap of less than 2 hours. 2 hours that contained the answer. The hidden photographs were enlarged again. Experts examined the background. A reflection appeared in the farmhouse window. At first, investigators thought it was meaningless. Then they noticed something. A second person. Inside the house. Standing behind the curtains. The image was too damaged to identify the figure. But it proved one thing. The person outside was not alone. Someone inside the Morgan home had opened the door. Someone had allowed them in. That discovery changed the entire case. This was no longer simply a forced abduction. No longer a stranger attacking a family at random. Someone had been welcomed inside. Someone the family recognized. The investigation now focused on a terrifying possibility. The person responsible may not have broken into the Morgan farmhouse. They may have been invited. 3 days later, another piece of evidence arrived from the abandoned quarry. A forensic team examining the old tunnels discovered a hidden compartment behind loose stones. Inside was a small metal box. Unlike the previous toolbox, this one had been carefully sealed. Inside were personal belongings, a child's drawing, a broken watch, a silver necklace, and a photograph. The photograph was old, but investigators recognized the faces immediately. Daniel Morgan, Emily Morgan, and a third person standing between them, someone who had never appeared in any previous family photographs, a man whose existence no one had mentioned, a man whose name had been missing from every interview. Until now, the case had spent weeks searching for a stranger, but the evidence was pointing toward someone much closer, someone connected to the Morgan family, someone who had been erased from their story. And as detectives uncovered the identity hidden inside that photograph, they began to understand that the disappearance of 5 people was not a random crime. It was a final chapter of a secret that had been buried for years. For nearly a month, investigators had searched for a criminal, a stranger, a predator, someone who had entered Blackwood County from outside and disappeared before anyone noticed. But the photograph recovered from the hidden compartment beneath the abandoned quarry suggested something far more disturbing. The person they were looking for had not arrived from nowhere. He had been part of the Morgan family's history. His face existed in their memories. His presence had once been accepted. And somehow, his name had vanished. The photograph was taken 12 years earlier. The quality was poor. The edges were damaged, but the faces were clear enough. Daniel Morgan stood on the left. Emily stood beside him. Between them was a man in his early 30s, a confident smile, one hand resting casually on Daniel's shoulder, the kind of pose shared by friends, not strangers. Detective Rachel Monroe studied the image for hours. She compared it with every photograph collected from a Morgan home, family vacations, school events, birthday parties, Christmas gatherings. The same pattern appeared repeatedly. Daniel and Emily documented almost every important moment of their lives. Yet this man appeared nowhere else, except in the hidden box. That raised the first major question. Why had someone hidden a photograph of a person who seemed important? And why had nobody mentioned him? The photograph was sent to the state identification unit. The process was slow. There was no digital facial recognition, no instant database search. Investigators relied on old records, interviews, and human memory. Technicians enhanced the image. They isolated the face. They compared physical characteristics. Height, facial structure, hairline, age estimates. Then one investigator noticed something written faintly on the back of the photograph. A name, almost erased. 3 words. Summer Reunion, 1979. And beneath it, a single name. Michael Voss. The name meant nothing to younger investigators. But Sheriff Thomas Keller recognized it immediately. He left the room without explanation. 10 minutes later, he returned carrying an old personnel file. Michael Voss, former resident of Blackwood County, former employee at Morgan Agricultural Repair, former friend of Daniel Morgan, and according to the file, presumed dead. The room became silent. Presumed? Monroe asked. Keller opened the file. Michael Voss disappeared in 1983. At the time, authorities believed he had died in a vehicle accident after leaving Blackwood County. His abandoned car was discovered near a mountain road several counties away. No body was recovered. No confirmed death certificate was issued. The case remained unresolved. But over the years, most people assumed he was gone, including Daniel Morgan. Or at least, that was what investigators believed. The connection between Daniel and Michael became the next focus. Interviews with older residents revealed a complicated history. In the late 1970s, Daniel, Michael, and another mechanic named Victor Hale operated a small repair business together. The three men were considered close. They worked together, hunted together, spent weekends together, until something changed. According to former employees, Daniel and Michael had a serious disagreement in 1982. No one knew exactly what happened. But after that argument, Michael left. The business continued. Daniel never spoke about him again. The official explanation was simple. A friendship ended. But investigators now question whether the story was much darker. Detective Monroe returned to the Morgan farmhouse evidence. She searched through Daniel's personal documents again. This time, she looked for one name, Michael Voss. At first, nothing. Then, inside an old filing cabinet beneath several tax documents, she found a sealed envelope. No address, no stamp, no date, only 2 words written on the front. If needed. Inside was a single page, a handwritten note. The handwriting was Daniel's. It contained only a few sentences. I thought he was gone. I thought this was over. If he comes back, tell Emily the truth. The note ended there. No explanation. No details. Only fear. The discovery transformed the investigation. Michael Voss was no longer a forgotten name. He was now a possible key. Detectives immediately reopened his disappearance case. They contacted agencies that had investigated his missing person report nearly a decade earlier. A new detail emerged. Michael's abandoned vehicle had not simply been found abandoned. Inside the vehicle, investigators had discovered signs of a struggle. At the time, they assumed it was related to an accident. Now they reconsidered. Had Michael Voss disappeared voluntarily? Or had someone wanted him to disappear? The timeline became increasingly complicated. Michael Voss disappears. The Morgan family vanishes. 8 years apart, but connected by the same name. Detectives asked the obvious question. Was Michael Voss responsible for the Morgan disappearance? Or was someone using his identity? The search for Michael expanded. Old addresses were reviewed. Employment records examined. Former acquaintances questioned. One former co-worker provided the first significant lead. Her name was Linda Mercer. She had worked at a diner outside Blackwood County during the early 1980s. She remembered Michael well. He was angry, she told investigators. Not violent, but angry. About what? She hesitated. Daniel. What about Daniel? I don't know everything. Tell us what you know. Linda looked toward the window. Michael believed Daniel stole something from him. What? He never said. Money? No. Property? No. Then what? Linda lowered her voice. A life. The statement puzzled investigators. But before they could question her further, Linda revealed something else. 2 weeks before the Morgan family disappeared, a man matching Michael Voss's description entered her diner. She recognized him immediately. Older, thinner, but unmistakable. Why didn't you report this before? Monroe asked. Linda looked ashamed. Because everyone thought he was dead. Did you speak to him? Yes. What did he say? Linda swallowed. He asked about Daniel. What exactly? He asked if Daniel still lived in the same house. The room went quiet. This was the first evidence suggesting Michael Voss may have returned to Blackwood County shortly before the disappearance. Investigators searched transportation records, hotel registrations, employment histories, bank activity. Nothing. No trace. It was as though Michael had returned as quietly as he had disappeared, then vanished again. Meanwhile, forensic experts continued examining evidence from the quarry. The necklace found inside the hidden compartment was identified as belonging to Olivia Morgan. The broken watch belonged to Jacob. The child's drawing belonged to Ethan. 3 items. 3 children. Evidence that the quarry was connected directly to the Morgan family. But investigators still had no answer to the most important question. Where were they? A new search operation began around the quarry. This time, investigators focused on areas beneath the collapse chambers. Heavy equipment was brought in. Engineers examined structural weaknesses. The work was dangerous. The tunnels were unstable. One wrong movement could cause a collapse. After several days, workers discovered something unusual. Behind a wall of loose stone was a narrow passage. It had not appeared on any official mining records. Someone had created it. Recently, inside the passage, investigators found signs of human activity. A chair, a battery-powered lantern, food containers, and a small notebook. The notebook contained only dates. No names. No explanations. But the final entry was written on October 5th, 1991, the night the Morgan family disappeared. The words were simple. 4 words. Everything is finally settled. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation, because for the first time, detectives had evidence that someone had planned the disappearance. This was not a sudden crime, not an accident, not a random encounter. Someone had prepared. Someone had waited. Someone had carried a secret for years. And as investigators traced the history of Michael Voss and the Morgan family, they uncovered a hidden conflict involving betrayal, money, and a promise that had been broken more than a decade earlier. A promise that someone had returned to collect. But the greatest mystery remained unanswered. If Michael Voss had come back, where had he gone afterward? And why had he taken the Morgan family with him? The discovery of the hidden tunnel changed the Morgan investigation from a missing person case into something far more sinister. For weeks, detectives had been chasing shadows. A mysterious figure. Unidentified vehicles. A forgotten friendship. A family that disappeared without explanation. But the notebook recovered beneath the quarry suggested something investigators had feared from the beginning. The disappearance was not spontaneous. Someone had planned it. Someone had prepared a place. Someone had waited. The question was no longer whether a crime had occurred. The question was how long the person responsible had been preparing. The hidden passage beneath Blackwood Quarry became the center of the investigation. The entrance was sealed immediately. Only authorized personnel were allowed inside. The walls were unstable. The air was damp and cold. Every step created echoes that disappeared into darkness. Investigators moved slowly, documenting everything. The small room at the end of the passage appeared almost like a forgotten shelter. There was an old wooden chair, a portable lanterne, several empty food containers, a blanket folded against the wall, and dozens of newspaper clippings, all related to the Morgan family. Detective Rachel Monroe stood silently as technicians carefully removed each piece of evidence. This was no random hiding place. Whoever built this room had spent time there. Whoever created it had been watching. The newspaper clippings covered years. Not just a disappearance. Years before. Photographs of Daniel Morgan repairing farm equipment. Articles about Emily receiving a teaching award. A local newspaper announcement about Jacob's baseball achievements. A school photograph showing Olivia holding her camera. Even a small article about Ethan winning a school drawing competition. The collection was disturbing. The person who kept these articles did not simply know the Morgan family. They had followed their lives, observed their successes, recorded their routines. The investigation suddenly took on a more personal dimension. This was not only about revenge. It appeared to be about obsession. The notebook became one of the most important pieces of evidence. Forensic specialists examined every page. The handwriting was consistent throughout. No names. No locations. Only dates and short statements. Most entries were vague. Almost ready. One more thing remains. He still believes everything is forgotten. Then the final entry. October 5th, 1991. Everything is finally settled. Investigators believe the notebook represented a timeline of preparation. But one question remained. Who wrote it? The first handwriting comparison focused on Michael Voss. Samples were collected from old employment records, bank documents, and government forms. The results surprised investigators. The handwriting showed similarities, but not enough for a definitive match. Michael remained a possibility, not a conclusion. That distinction became critical. The investigation could not accuse a man based only on suspicion, especially one who had already disappeared nearly a decade earlier. Then detectives discovered something unexpected. Michael Voss had not been the only person hiding a secret. During a renewed search of Daniel Morgan's business records, investigators found evidence of a private financial arrangement from 1982. A large payment, transferred from Daniel's account to an unknown recipient. The transaction occurred only weeks before Michael Voss disappeared. The amount was significant, enough to change someone's life, enough to create a motive, but the recipient's name was missing. The account had been closed years earlier. The bank involved had merged twice. Records were incomplete. Another mystery. Another missing piece. Detective Monroe began reconstructing the events of 1982. She interviewed former employees from Morgan Agricultural Repair. One name repeatedly appeared. Victor Hale, the third partner. The man who remained in Blackwood after Michael vanished. When questioned again, Hale became defensive. I already told you everything. You told us you and Daniel argued with Michael. Because we did. About money? No. Then about what? Hale looked away. Old problems. What kind of problems? Personal ones. Between you and Michael? Between all of us. The answer raised more questions than it solved. Investigators learned that Daniel, Michael, and Victor had once been more than business partners. They had been friends. Almost brothers. They shared hunting trips. Celebrated holidays together. Their families spent weekends together. Then, suddenly, everything ended. No explanation. No public argument. No legal dispute. Just silence. The kind of silence that usually hides something. A deeper review of old records revealed another disturbing detail. 3 months before Michael Voss disappeared, Daniel Morgan changed his life insurance policy. The beneficiary was no longer Emily. Instead, a large portion was assigned to a trust. The trust had been created under a name that investigators did not recognize: the Blackwood Heritage Fund. At first, it appeared unrelated, but when detectives searched the registration documents, they found something impossible. The trust had been signed by two people, Daniel Morgan and Michael Voss, the same man everyone believed had vanished in 1983. The discovery created a new theory. Perhaps Michael had never truly disappeared. Perhaps the disappearance had been staged. Perhaps someone wanted the world to believe Michael Voss was dead. But why? Who benefited? And why return 8 years later? The investigation team expanded its focus. Michael Voss was no longer just a suspect. He was also a possible victim. If he had survived after 1983, what had happened during those missing years? Where had he lived? How had he survived? Why had he stayed hidden? And why had he chosen October 5th, 1991, to return? Then came another breakthrough. A retired mechanic named George Palmer contacted police. He had seen the news reports about Michael Voss. He claimed he had information. Palmer owned a small repair shop outside the county. According to him, a man using the name Michael had worked there briefly in 1988. He was different, Palmer said. Different how? He knew engines, he knew machines, but he never talked about himself. Did he look like Michael Voss? Palmer hesitated. I didn't know that name then. Did you recognize a photograph? Yes. You're sure? Absolutely. Why? Palmer pointed to an old scar visible near the man's jaw. The person who worked for me had the same scar. The information was immediately verified. Michael Voss may have been alive years after his reported disappearance. Investigators searched Palmer's records. Employment paperwork, payment receipts, address information, everything. But the trail ended. The man had used cash. No permanent address. No family contact. No official identification. He had lived like a ghost. Exactly the way someone hiding would live. Meanwhile, forensic teams returned to the hidden tunnel. They discovered something beneath the wooden floor. A metal plate, bolted tightly into ground. When removed, a narrow compartment appeared. Inside was a collection of photographs. Not newspaper images. Not old family pictures. Recent photographs. Taken shortly before October 5th. The Morgan family. At home. Driving. Shopping. Walking around town. Someone had been documenting their movements. The final photograph showed the Morgan farmhouse at night. The image was taken from the same direction as Olivia's hidden photograph. The timestamp was clear. 8:40 p.m. 7 minutes before Emily's final phone call. And in the corner of the image, reflected in the vehicle mirror, was another person. The same figure investigators had been searching for. But this time, there was something different. The photograph captured his hand, and around his wrist was a distinctive silver watch. A watch investigators recognized immediately, because an identical watch appeared in a photograph from 1979. The same photograph that introduced them to Michael Voss. The investigation had spent weeks searching for a stranger, but the evidence was now pointing towards someone connected to the Morgan family for more than a decade. Someone who knew their habits. Someone who understood their routines. Someone who had disappeared once before and returned when everyone believed he was gone forever. The name Michael Voss was no longer a forgotten chapter. It would become in the center of the darkest mystery Blackwood County had ever faced. But before investigators could uncover what happened on October 5th, they needed to answer one final question. What secret had Daniel Morgan and Michael Voss been willing to hide for 12 years? Because whatever happened beneath Blackwood Quarry, it began long before the Morgan family vanished. For investigators in Blackwood County, the name Michael Voss had transformed from a forgotten file into a living question. For nearly a decade, everyone believed he was dead. A missing man. A closed chapter. A tragedy from another time. But the evidence now suggested something far more complicated. Michael Voss had not disappeared. He had hidden. And sometime before October 1991, he had returned to Blackwood County, carrying years of anger, secrets, and unfinished business. The Morgan family had not been chosen at random. Someone had been waiting. Someone had been watching. Someone had known exactly where they would be. The investigation moved deeper into the past. Detectives began reconstructing the relationship between Daniel Morgan and Michael Voss. The official story had always been simple. 3 friends started a repair business. One left. The others continued. But the truth hidden beneath old records revealed a much more complicated history. In 1978, Morgan, Voss, and Victor Hale had purchased a small piece of industrial property near Blackwood Quarry. The land was considered worthless by most residents. The quarry had closed years earlier. The tunnels were unstable. The area was abandoned. But the 3 men believed the property had potential. They planned to build a specialized agricultural equipment facility. The project never happened. At least, that was what everyone believed. When investigators searched old county documents, they found something strange. The property transfer records had been altered. The original documents listed 3 owners: Daniel Morgan, Michael Voss, Victor Hale. But years later, only Daniel Morgan's name remained. Someone had removed the other 2 names. The changes were officially recorded. But no explanation existed. No legal dispute. No court decision. No public announcement. Just a quiet transfer that nobody remembered, except one person. Her name was Evelyn Carter. She was 76 years old and had worked as a county records clerk during the early 1980s. When Detective Monroe contacted her, Evelyn immediately recognized the names. Daniel Morgan and Michael Voss? Yes. I wondered when someone would finally ask. The statement surprised Monroe. You knew something was wrong? Evelyn looked through old documents before answering. I knew those 3 men were hiding something. What makes you say that? Because people who have nothing to hide don't spend hours in my office asking how to erase their own history. Evelyn explained that in 1982, months before Michael disappeared, the 3 partners visited her office repeatedly. They requested copies of old property documents. They argued about ownership. They argued about money. And they argued about something she could not understand. A project, she said. What kind of project? They never told me. Did they seem afraid? Evelyn thought carefully. Michael did. Afraid of Daniel? No. Then who? She looked down. Afraid of what would happen if the truth came out. That interview changed the direction of the investigation. Detectives stopped viewing Michael Voss only as a suspect. They began considering another possibility. Maybe he was not the person who destroyed the Morgan family. Maybe he was the reason someone else did. Meanwhile, forensic teams continued examining the hidden chamber beneath the quarry. The photographs recovered there revealed more than surveillance. They showed preparation. Dates written on the backs of images proved someone had been tracking the Morgan family for months. March, April, May, June, summer, early autumn. The person behind the camera had followed their lives patiently. The photographs showed Daniel leaving work, Emily arriving at school, Jacob practicing baseball, Olivia walking through town, Ethan playing outside. The collection was not a collection of random observations. It was a schedule, a map of their existence. Someone had studied every detail. Then investigators noticed something disturbing. The photographs stopped in September. There were no images from the final week before the disappearance. No explanation. Until they found the last photograph. It showed the Morgan farmhouse, taken from a distance. On the back, written in black ink, "Tomorrow." The discovery sent a wave of fear through the department. Whoever created the collection had known. The disappearance was not only planned, it was scheduled. The next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A letter, sent anonymously to the sheriff's office. Inside was a single page. No fingerprints. No return address. Only one sentence. "You're looking for the wrong person." Attached was a photocopy of an old newspaper article. The article was from 1983. It described Michael Voss's disappearance. But someone had circled one paragraph. A paragraph investigators had overlooked for years. A witness had reported seeing Michael's vehicle near a highway rest stop 2 days after he supposedly disappeared. At the time, police dismissed the report. The witness was considered unreliable. The statement was never followed up. Now investigators wanted to know why. They located the witness. His name was Raymond Ellis. He was 81 years old, living quietly in another state. When investigators showed him the article, he immediately remembered. "I knew that man wasn't dead." "What did you see?" "Michael Voss." "You're certain?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he looked terrified." Raymond explained that in 1983 he worked as a truck driver. During a late-night stop, he saw a man sitting alone inside a vehicle. The man appeared injured. Confused, he approached to offer help. The driver refused. But before leaving, Raymond noticed something. A second vehicle parked nearby. A dark pickup truck. What did the other driver look like? Raymond hesitated. "I never saw his face." "Anything else?" "He wore a silver watch." Detective Monroe immediately looked at Sheriff Keller. The same watch. The same detail appearing again and again. Investigators returned to Blackwood. They reopened every interview involving Victor Hale. The former business partner had always maintained that Michael left because of personal problems. But now detectives questioned the timeline. Victor had been the last confirmed person known to have spoken with Michael before his disappearance. He had also been one of the only people who knew about the quarry property. And he had a connection to the silver watch. A photograph from 1980 showed Victor wearing the exact same style. A vintage silver wristwatch. Detectives searched his background, financial records, property history, business transactions. Then they discovered something. Victor Hale had secretly purchased equipment used for underground excavation in 1990, 1 year before the Morgan disappearance. The equipment was never registered to his business. It was paid for through a private account. The same account connected to the mysterious Blackwood Heritage Fund. For the first time, investigators had a new theory. Michael Voss may not have returned to harm the Morgans. He may have returned because he knew someone else was preparing to do it. The hidden tunnel, the surveillance photographs, the secret financial records. Everything pointed toward a conflict that began 12 years earlier. A conflict between 3 friends: Daniel Morgan, Michael Voss, Victor Hale. But before investigators could confront Victor, another discovery emerged. A search of an abandoned storage unit connected to Hale revealed a collection of documents. Among them was a handwritten letter, addressed to Michael Voss, never delivered. The letter contained only a few lines. You took something from me. You destroyed everything. After tonight, nobody will ever know the truth. There was no signature, but the handwriting matched Victor Hale. The investigation had reached a turning point. For years, Blackwood County believed the Morgan disappearance was a mystery involving an unknown outsider. Now detectives faced a far more disturbing possibility. The answer had been inside the community all along. A man who had lived among them. A man who had watched the investigation unfold. A man who knew exactly what happened on the night the Morgan family disappeared. But before police could question Victor Hale, he was already gone. His house stood empty. His truck was missing. And inside his abandoned garage, investigators found fresh footprints leading toward the forest. The same forest where everything began. The search for answers had finally reached the person they believed held the truth. But the person who knew the most had just disappeared. The disappearance of Victor Hale changed the investigation from a search for answers into a race against time. For weeks, detectives in Blackwood County had been assembling fragments of a mystery that stretched back more than a decade. A hidden tunnel, a forgotten partnership, a missing man who may have never been dead, a family disappearance carefully planned. And now, the one person investigators believed could explain everything had vanished. Victor Hale's farmhouse sat at the northern edge of Blackwood County, surrounded by farmland and thick patches of woodland. It was the kind of property where privacy came naturally. A long gravel driveway, no nearby neighbors, no streetlights, no cameras, a place where someone could leave without being noticed. When investigators arrived, the first thing they noticed was a silence. The front door was unlocked. The kitchen light was still on. A cup of coffee sat beside an open newspaper. The newspaper was dated 3 days earlier. Victor had left in a hurry, but he had not planned to be gone forever. At least, that was what the evidence suggested. Inside the house, investigators discovered several important items. A loquet filin cabinet, a collection of old photographs, maps of Blackwood County, and dozens of handwritten notes. Unlike Michael Voss's hidden notebook, Victor's notes were not vague. They were angry, bitter, full of resentment. Most referred to the same names: Daniel, Michael, the quarry, the project, the betrayal. Detective Rachel Monroe spent hours reviewing the documents. The same story appeared repeatedly. A friendship destroyed. A business conflict. A secret that had never been revealed. But one question remained. What secret was important enough to destroy 5 lives? The answer appeared in an envelope hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside were copies of old financial records. The documents revealed that the Blackwood Quarry property had never been purchased for an agricultural facility. That had been a cover story. The real purpose was something else. In 1979, Daniel Morgan, Michael Voss, and Victor Hale discovered something beneath the abandoned quarry. A sealed underground chamber. Not part of the original mining operation. A forgotten construction area left behind decades earlier. Inside, they found old equipment and records belonging to a previous owner. Among those records was evidence of illegal financial activity from years earlier. Money transfers, hidden accounts, names of people who had powerful connections throughout the county. The discovery was valuable, but it was also dangerous. According to Victor's notes, the 3 men initially planned to expose what they had found. They believed the information could bring down corrupt officials and wealthy businessmen who had protected the secret for years. But something changed. Someone offered them money. A large amount. Enough to make them reconsider. Daniel wanted to walk away. Michael wanted to reveal everything. Victor wanted to negotiate. The friendship collapsed, and the secret remained buried. Investigators now believed the conflict between the three men had never truly ended. Michael disappeared because he knew too much. Daniel stayed silent because he feared the consequences. Victor spent years trying to control the situation. Then, in 1991, something happened. Something forced the past to return. The biggest question became, where was Michael Voss during those 8 years? Investigators searched every available record again. This time, they discovered a hidden connection. From 1984 to 1990, several anonymous donations had been sent to organizations supporting missing persons investigations. The donations were small, but they all originated from accounts connected to different towns. The person sending them used different names, but the handwriting on the envelopes was identical. Michael Voss had been searching, not hiding, searching, and one of the missing person files he repeatedly followed was his own. Detectives developed a new theory. Michael had survived whatever happened in 1983. He had spent years gathering information, waiting for an opportunity, and eventually he returned to Blackwood because he believed the truth could finally be exposed. But why was he connected to the Morgan disappearance? Was he involved? Or was he trying to stop Victor? The answer seemed closer when investigators found a hidden recording inside Victor Hale's garage. A small cassette tape. The label contained only one date. October 5th, 1991. The night the Morgan family disappeared. The tape quality was poor. Static filled the first several seconds. Then voices appeared. Two men, arguing. The first voice was immediately identified. Victor Hale. The second could not be confirmed, but investigators believed it was Michael Voss. The conversation was brief, yet one sentence changed everything. Victor said, "You should have stayed dead." The other voice responded, "You should have told the truth." Then a loud sound interrupted the recording. A crash. A struggle. The tape ended. The discovery created a new timeline. Victor and Michael were together on the night of the disappearance. But what happened afterward? The answer came from a surprising source. A former sheriff's deputy named Alan Pierce. He had been one of the first officers inside the Morgan farmhouse 30 years earlier. After hearing about the cassette, he contacted Detective Monroe. "I never told anyone this," he said. "Why?" "Because I wasn't sure." "What happened?" Pierce described returning to the farmhouse 2 days after the initial investigation. He had noticed something unusual near the back fence. A second set of footprints. Smaller, not matching the large boot print found inside. At the time, he assumed they belonged to investigators. Years later, he realized something. The footprints appeared before the investigation team arrived. Someone else had been there. After the disappearance, investigators returned to the farmhouse property. Using modern mapping techniques, they reconstructed the area. The second footprints led away from the house toward a small abandoned road. A road that connected directly to Victor Hale's property. The distance was less than 2 miles. Someone could walk it in under an hour. Then came another discovery. A hidden compartment inside Victor's truck. Behind the dashboard was a small envelope. Inside, a photograph, a key, and a handwritten message. The photograph showed Daniel Morgan and Victor Hale standing beside the quarry entrance in 1979. The key matched the lock found inside the hidden tunnel. The message contained only 6 words. "The truth is still below." The tunnel was searched again. This time, investigators opened the sealed chamber that had remained untouched. Inside, they found something that changed the entire case. A room, larger than expected. Old equipment, storage containers, and on the wall, 5 names written in black marker. Daniel Morgan, Emily Morgan, Jacob Morgan, Olivia Morgan, Ethan Morgan. Beside the names were dates. October 5th. But underneath them, another name. A name investigators never expected. Michael Voss. The meaning was unclear. Was Michael a victim? A suspect? A witness? The evidence refused to answer. But one thing was certain. The disappearance of the Morgan family was not simply about revenge. It was about a secret powerful enough to destroy friendships, erase identities, and keep people silent for more than 30 years. And somewhere inside Blackwood Forest, Victor Hale was still missing. Michael Voss was still missing. And the truth remained buried beneath the place where everything began. Until investigators received a phone call from a woman who claimed she knew where Victor had gone. A woman who had kept the secret for 3 decades, and who was finally ready to speak. For 30 years, Blackwood County lived with a question that had no answer. What happened to the Morgan family? The disappearance had become part of local history. A story told in quiet voices. A warning repeated to children. A mystery that survived because nobody could explain how 5 people vanished from a locked farmhouse and left behind only fragment of evidence. But now, after 3 decades of silence, someone was finally ready to speak. Her name was Claire Whitmore, and she had been carrying the secret since the night the Morgan family disappeared. Detective Rachel Monroe received the call just after midnight. The voice on the other end was elderly, shaking, but determined. I know who was there that night. Monroe immediately grabbed a notebook. Who is this? My name is Claire Whitmore. Do you know the Morgan family? A long pause. Yes. How? Another pause. Because I was there. The line went silent. Then Claire added one sentence. I should have told the truth 30 years ago. Claire Whitmore was 72 years old. She had lived outside Blackwood County for decades. According to public records, she had no connection to the Morgan investigation. No interviews. No statements. No appearance in any police files. That alone made detectives suspicious. In a case where hundreds of people had been questioned, how could someone who claimed to have been there never appear in the investigation? The answer was simple. She had never told anyone. When Detective Monroe met Claire, she noticed immediately that the woman had rehearsed this moment many times. She placed an old photograph on the table. It showed a younger Claire, standing beside Daniel Morgan, and beside them, Michael Voss. The same group photograph investigators had found hidden beneath the quarry. But Claire was not just an acquaintance. She had been part of their story. Claire explained that in the late 1970s, she worked as an accountant for Morgan Agricultural Repair. She handled invoices, taxes, financial documents. She knew about the quarry property. She knew about the 3 partners. And she knew something had changed between them. Daniel was the only one who wanted to walk away. Claire said, "From what?" "The money." "What money?" Claire looked down. The money they found. She described the discovery beneath Blackwood Quarry, the hidden chamber, the documents, the evidence of illegal activity connected to several influential people in the region. According to Claire, Michael wanted to expose everything. He believed the truth mattered more than consequences. Victor disagreed. He saw the information as an opportunity. Daniel was caught between them. He wanted to protect his family. He wanted to forget the entire thing had ever happened. But secrets do not disappear simply because people stop talking about them. Claire revealed another detail investigators had never known. In 1983, Michael Voss did not disappear accidentally. He was attacked. She had not witnessed the entire event, but she knew enough. Who attacked him? Claire closed her eyes. Victor. The room became silent. You're certain? I saw them arguing. When? The night before Michael disappeared. About what? About Daniel. According to Claire, Michael had discovered Victor was secretly using information from the quarry documents for personal gain. Victor had been selling pieces of information, making deals, protecting certain people. Michael threatened to expose him. That threat changed everything. The friendship ended, and Michael vanished. But Claire's story raised another question. If Victor was responsible for Michael's disappearance in 1983, why did Michael return in 1991? Claire had an answer. He came back because he knew Daniel was in danger. Investigators listened carefully. Claire explained that Michael contacted her weeks before the Morgan family disappeared. He had been watching Victor. He believed Victor was planning something. He told me Daniel had made a mistake. What mistake? He trusted Victor. Did Michael say what Victor planned? Claire hesitated. He said Victor wanted the secret buried forever. This was the first explanation that connected all the evidence. The surveillance photographs, the hidden tunnel, the notebook, the quarry, the conflict between three former friends. But one critical question remained. What happened on October 5th, 1991? Claire finally answered. She said she received a phone call from Michael that evening. He sounded desperate. He told me to stay away. Why? He said Victor was already there. Where? The Morgan house. Claire admitted she drove toward Hollow Creek Road that night. She never reached the farmhouse. Instead, she stopped near the old logging road. There, she saw two vehicles. A dark pickup. A white van. Exactly matching the description given by Leonard Hayes. She also saw three people. Victor Hale, Michael Voss, and Daniel Morgan. Alive. Daniel was with them? Yes. Was he forced? Claire looked away. At first, no. The answer surprised investigators. What do you mean? They were arguing. About what? The truth. Claire said she could not hear every word, but she saw Daniel appear angry. Michael looked frightened. Victor looked determined. Then something changed. A struggle began. Claire became afraid. She drove away. She never called police. Never told anyone. For 30 years. Why? Monroe asked. Claire's answer was painful. Because I thought if I stayed silent, nobody else would get hurt. Did that happen? Claire looked at the detective. No. The revelation reopened the entire case. For the first time, investigators had a witness placing all three key figures together on the night of the disappearance. But Claire's testimony created another mystery. If Daniel, Michael, and Victor were together, where were Emily, Jacob, Olivia, and Ethan? And what happened after the argument? A new search began based on Claire's information. Investigators returned to the logging road. This time, they focused on an area Claire had avoided for decades. A section of forest hidden behind an abandoned service building. Using ground scanning equipment, search teams discovered a disturbance beneath the soil. A buried structure, not a grave, a storage chamber. Inside were items that immediately connected the location to the Morgan family. Emily's teaching badge, Jacob's baseball glove, Olivier's camelback, Ethan's backpack. The belongings were preserved, but the family was not there. The discovery suggested something investigators had not considered. The quarry was not the final location. It was only part of the plan. Someone had moved evidence between locations. Someone had controlled the investigation from the beginning. Then investigators found one more item, a small cassette recorder. Inside was a tape. The date written on the label, October 6, 1991, the day after the Morgan family disappeared. The recording contained only one voice, a man speaking quietly. The audio quality was damaged, but one sentence was clear. "I told you this would happen, Daniel." The voice belonged to Victor Hale. Then came another sound, a second voice, weak, distant, but alive, a man whispering. You never learn when to stop. Investigators enhanced the audio. The second voice was identified. Michael Voss. The discovery changed everything. Michael Voss had survived after October 5th. He was alive at least one day later. But where had he gone? And why had he never come forward? The case that had seemed impossible was finally beginning to reveal its shape. The Morgan family had not vanished into nowhere. They had been caught in a decades-old conflict, a conflict involving betrayal, hidden money, and a secret that 3 men had tried to bury. But one question remained, the most important question. If Michael Voss survived, where was he now? And did he know what happened to the 5 members of the Morgan family? Because after 30 years of silence, the missing man from 1983 was about to become the final witness to the darkest night in Blackwood County history. For 30 years, the name Michael Voss existed between 2 worlds. To the people of Blackwood County, he was a missing man, a forgotten photograph, a question from the past, a story older residents told when they wanted to explain why some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. But to investigators, Michael Voss had become something else, a witness, a possible victim, and perhaps the only person alive who knew the complete truth about what happened to the Morgan family. The problem was simple. Nobody knew where he was. After the discovery of the recording, investigators reopened every lead connected to Michael Voss, every employment record, every possible sighting, every anonymous donation, every unexplained movement. The man who had disappeared in 1983 had spent years living like a ghost. But ghosts leave traces. Sometimes they are small. A signature, a photograph, a forgotten conversation, a person who remembers. The search expanded beyond Missouri. Detectives contacted agencies in several states. Old missing person databases were reviewed. Archived documents were examined. And after weeks of searching, they found something. A driver's license application from 2004. The name was different, but the photograph matched. Older, thinner, gray hair. Same scar near the jaw. Michael Voss was alive. The address connected to the document led investigators to a small mountain town in Colorado, a place almost impossible to connect to Blackwood County. Michael had lived there quietly for nearly 15 years. He repaired antique machinery, worked alone, avoided attention. Neighbors described him as polite but distant, a man who never discussed his past. When investigators arrived at his cabin, they found the door open. Inside was a small living space. No luxury. No signs of a secret life. Just books, tools, old photographs, and a locked metal box. The box contained documents that changed the investigation again. Inside were copies of newspaper articles about the Morgan disappearance, maps of Blackwood County, photographs of the quarry, and a handwritten journal. The first page contained one sentence: "I failed to protect them." Michael Voss agreed to meet investigators, but he refused to return to Blackwood. He chose a neutral location, a quiet conference room in a small police station. When Detective Rachel Monroe entered, she immediately recognized him, not from memory. From the photograph, the man between Daniel Morgan and Victor Hale, the man who had been missing for 30 years. Michael looked older than expected, tired, like someone who had spent decades carrying something too heavy. "I knew this day would come," he said. The interview lasted nearly 9 hours. Michael confirmed many details investigators had suspected. He admitted he discovered the hidden chamber beneath Blackwood Quarry in 1979. He admitted the 3 men had found documents that could have exposed powerful people in the region. He admitted they had accepted money to remain silent. But he insisted he was not responsible for the Morgan disappearance. "I came back to stop Victor." Michael explained what happened after his disappearance in 1983. He said Victor had confronted him after discovering that Michael intended to reveal the truth. The argument became violent. Michael was injured. He fled. He survived. But he realized something. As long as he returned openly, Victor would know he was alive. And if Victor knew, Daniel's family would be in danger. So Michael disappeared. He watched from a distance, waiting. "Why didn't you go to police?" Monroe asked. Michael looked down. "Because I was afraid." "Of Victor?" "Of everyone. Everyone. You don't understand what we found." "Then explain." Michael was silent for several seconds. The people connected to that secret had power. What kind of power? Enough to make a man disappear. Michael revealed that the quarry documents were not only about illegal financial activity. They contained names, officials, business owners, people who had influence throughout the region. According to him, Victor believed controlling that information gave him protection. But Daniel wanted out. He wanted to tell the truth. And that decision placed his family in danger. The most important part of Michael's testimony involved the night of October 5th, 1991. He said he went to the Morgan farmhouse because he believed Victor was planning something. When he arrived, it was already too late. Victor was inside. Daniel was arguing with him. Michael said he entered through the back door. That was when the situation became violent. "Where was Emily?" Monroe asked. Michael closed his eyes. "She was there." "And the children?" "They were there too." The room became silent. "What happened?" Michael looked away. "I don't know how to explain it." "Try." "Victor didn't come there to kill them." "Then why?" He wanted Daniel to cooperate. Cooperate with what? Giving him the final documents. According to Michael, Victor believed Daniel had hidden the original evidence from the quarry. He thought Daniel knew where the missing documents were. The confrontation was supposed to be intimidation, a threat, a way to force Daniel to reveal the location. But something went wrong. What went wrong? Michael answered quietly. Victor lost control. Investigators pressed for details. Michael admitted there was a struggle. He admitted Daniel was injured. He admitted Emily tried to protect her children. But he refused to describe the final moments. Not because he did not remember, because he did. Where are they, Michael? The question remained unanswered for a long time. Finally he spoke. Victor, move them. Where? I don't know. You were there. Yes. Then how can you not know? Michael looked directly at Monroe. Because Victor made sure I couldn't follow. Investigators later confirmed one important detail. Michael's account matched physical evidence. The boot print, the photographs, the hidden tunnel, the timeline, the recording. For the first time in 30 years, the investigation had a coherent explanation. But there was still one problem. Victor Hale. He was still missing. Michael provided investigators with the last location where he believed Victor might have gone. An abandoned mining area outside Blackwood County. A place Victor had used years earlier. Search teams arrived within hours. Inside a forgotten storage building, they found evidence. A sleeping bag, food supplies, maps, and a notebook. Victor Hale had been there recently. The final page contained a message, not an apology, not a confession, a warning. The truth dies with me. But Victor was not there. He had left before investigators arrived. However, he had not left empty-handed. The notebook contained one final clue, a series of coordinates. The coordinates pointed toward the deepest section of Blackwood Forest, a place never searched during the original investigation, a place hidden beyond the old logging roads, a place where even experienced search teams rarely traveled. The next morning, hundreds of officers entered the forest. 30 years after the Morgan family disappeared, the ground beneath Blackwood was finally beginning to reveal its secrets. The search led investigators through abandoned trails, across forgotten streams, past trees that had grown for decades above buried evidence. Then, just before sunset, a search officer found something. A small metal object half buried beneath the soil. A child's necklace. One that belonged to Olivia Morgan. The discovery confirmed what everyone feared. The final answer was somewhere nearby. But as investigators prepared to search the area completely, they found another object lying only a few feet away. An old cassette recorder, still protected inside a waterproof case. Inside was a final recording. A recording made by Victor Hale. And this time, he was not speaking to investigators. He was speaking to Michael Voss. The truth of the Morgan family disappearance had waited 30 years. Now, it was finally ready to be heard. For 30 years, the Morgan family disappearance remained one of Blackwood County's darkest mysteries. 5 people vanished. A farmhouse left behind. A community left searching. A case filled with unanswered questions. But now, deep inside Blackwood Forest, investigators have found something that could finally reveal the truth. An old cassette recorder, protected inside a waterproof container, hidden beneath the ground, waiting for someone to find it. The recorder was damaged. The tape was old. But the investigators knew one thing. Whatever was recorded on that device had been left there intentionally. Someone wanted it to survive. Someone wanted the truth to be heard. The forensic audio team worked through the night. Every second mattered. The tape had suffered from moisture damage. The magnetic strip was fragile. A single mistake could erase decades-old evidence. Detective Rachel Monroe waited outside the laboratory. She had spent months following the trail. The hidden photographs, the forgotten documents, the missing man, the secret tunnel, the witness who stayed silent. Every path had led to this moment. Finally, the technician opened the door. We recovered most of it. Most. Some sections are damaged. Can you identify the speaker? The technician looked at the recorder. Yes. A pause. It's Victor Hale. The recording began with several seconds of static, then breathing, heavy breathing. A man who sounded exhausted, afraid. Then Victor Hale spoke. If you're hearing this. A long pause. Then I didn't make it out. Investigators exchanged looks. The recording was not a confession. It was something else. A message. A final statement from a man who knew he was running out of time. Victor's voice continued. I spent 30 years trying to bury this. Static interrupted the sentence. I thought time would erase it. Another pause. But some things don't disappear. The recording became clearer. Victor described the events leading to the Morgan family's disappearance. He confirmed what investigators had suspected. The conflict did not begin in 1991. It began in 1979, the day 3 friends discovered something hidden beneath Blackwood Quarry. According to Victor, the documents they found beneath the quarry connected powerful people to years of illegal operations. But the documents were only part of the discovery. The most valuable item was something else. A ledger. A complete record of payments. Names. Dates. Transactions. Proof. Whoever controlled that ledger controlled everyone involved. And Victor wanted it. For years, Victor believed Daniel Morgan had hidden the ledger. Michael believed Victor wanted to sell it. Daniel believed both men had become obsessed. The friendship that once united them slowly turned into suspicion, then hatred. Victor admitted he had arranged Michael's disappearance in 1983. But he claimed he never intended for Michael to die. I only wanted him gone. The words were followed by silence. Then, I was wrong. The recording revealed something investigators had never known. Michael Voss had returned to Blackwood not to attack the Morgans. He had returned because he discovered Victor was preparing to act. Michael believed Daniel and his family were in danger, but he arrived too late. Victor described the night of October 5th, 1991. He went to the Morgan farmhouse. He confronted Daniel. He demanded the ledger. Daniel refused. The argument escalated. Emily entered the room. The children woke up. The situation became chaotic. Victor's voice became quieter. I never planned for them to see. A long pause. I never planned for any of this. Investigators listened carefully. The recording did not contain every detail, but it confirmed the central truth. The Morgan family disappearance was not random. It was caused by a conflict that had existed for more than a decade, a secret, a betrayal, and one man's attempt to protect what he had done. Victor continued. Michael tried to stop me. He always thought he could fix everything. But he didn't understand. Another pause. Nobody was fixing anything anymore. The most important revelation came near the end of the recording. Victor revealed where he had taken the Morgan family. Not the quarry. Not the tunnel. A third location. A place connected to the original secret. A place where the ledger had been hidden. A place investigators had never searched. The coordinates recorded in the final minutes of the tape matched an abandoned underground facility several miles beyond the old quarry. The location had once been part of a mining operation, officially closed in the 1960s. Forgotten, buried beneath decades of forest growth. Search teams moved immediately. The area was difficult to access. The entrance had collapsed. Trees covered the old structures. Nature had hidden everything. But inside the abandoned facility, investigators found evidence that someone had been there. Recently, a lantern, fresh footprints, food supplies, and on a wooden table, a leather folder. Inside was a ledger, the document that had caused decades of fear, the document that had destroyed friendships, the document that explained everything. But the discovery of the ledger created another shock. The final pages contained information that changed the investigation. Victor Hale had not acted alone. The names recorded in the ledger included people who had spent years avoiding suspicion: business leaders, former officials, individuals who had influenced the investigation from the beginning. Some had even participated in the original search operations. The secret had not been protected by one person. It had been protected by a network. The discovery reopened old questions. How much of the original investigation had been affected? Were important clues ignored? Were witnesses pressured into silence? Had the Morgan family disappeared because they knew too much? Or because someone feared what they could reveal? Then investigators found the final piece. Inside the underground facility was another room, small, hidden behind a reinforced door. Inside were personal belongings, carefully preserved. A family photograph, Emily's wedding ring, Daniel's wallet, Jacob's baseball glove, Olivia's camera, Ethan's toy dinosaur. For 30 years, the Morgan family had been missing. Now their belongings had finally returned. But the investigation still faced one final question. Where were they? The answer came from the most unexpected place. A message written on the back of the family photograph. Not written by Victor. Not written by Michael. Written by Daniel Morgan. The words were barely visible, but clear enough. If we disappear, look beneath the old foundation. Investigators returned to the Morgan farmhouse, the place where everything began. Using the information from Daniel's message, they searched beneath the original foundation. Deep below the basement floor, hidden beneath layers of concrete, they discovered a sealed chamber. Inside, the final answers. The discovery shocked Blackwood County. After 30 years of uncertainty, investigators finally confirmed what had happened to the Morgan family. They had been victims of a crime born from greed, fear, and a secret that should never have existed. The case that haunted generations was no longer a mystery. But the truth came with a painful realization. The Morgan family had not been forgotten. They had been remembered every day by a community that refused to stop searching. Victor Hale was never found alive. His final days remain uncertain. Some believe he disappeared into the wilderness. Others believe he died carrying the weight of his own secrets. Michael Voss survived. He spent the rest of his life cooperating with investigators, answering questions, and helping expose the hidden network connected to the quarry documents. But he never forgave himself. Because, in his own words, I knew something terrible was coming. And I still wasn't fast enough. Years later, Blackwood County changed. The abandoned quarry was closed permanently. The old tunnels were sealed. A memorial was built for Daniel, Emily, Jacob, Olivia, and Ethan Morgan. 5 names, 5 lives, 5 people whose disappearance became a symbol of the damage caused by secrets left buried too long. The Morgan case began with a silent farmhouse, a missing family, and a question nobody could answer. How could 5 people disappear without a trace? The answer was hidden for 30 years beneath Blackwood Forest, buried under lies, protected by fear. But eventually, the truth always finds a way back to surface.